Have you ever wondered what makes Buddhism so fascinating? It's not just a religion. It's a path to a deeper understanding of life, suffering, and ultimately, the nature of reality itself. Whether you're new to the teachings of the Buddha or have explored them before, today's journey is sure to take you on a deeper dive into one of the most profound traditions the world has ever known. In this video, we're going to explore two of the most influential branches of Buddhism, Theravada and Mahayana. You've probably heard these terms before, but have you ever wondered how they actually differ? What is the essence of these two schools? And how do they shape the way millions of people around the world approach life, suffering, and enlightenment? So, if you've ever been curious about why there are different schools of thought within Buddhism, why Theravada emphasizes personal liberation while Mahayana focuses on helping others, and what that means for your spiritual path, then you're in the right place. I'm going to break down these differences and shed light on the rich history and teachings that make Buddhism such a profound and transformative practice. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more insightful videos. It helps the channel grow and brings you more content like this. So hit that bell icon and join the journey. Let's get started. Buddhism, one of the oldest and most influential religions in the world, has evolved over centuries, spreading across various regions and developing into distinct branches, or denominations. While many people may have heard of Buddhism, they may not be fully aware of the nuances that differentiate its major schools of thought. Among these schools, the two most prominent are Theravada and Mahayana. In this analysis, we will explore how these branches of Buddhism emerged, their core differences, and how each has shaped the understanding and practice of Buddhism today. Buddhism originated in India around the 6th century BCE with the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, who later became known as the Buddha. The Buddha's life story is central to Buddhist philosophy. Born into a royal family in what is today Nepal, Siddhartha was shielded from the harsh realities of life outside his palace. However, when he encountered the suffering of the world old age, illness, and death, he became deeply troubled and decided to leave his privileged life behind. For years, he sought enlightenment through extreme ascetic practices, but it was only after finding a balance between indulgence and self-denial, a path he called the middle way, that he reached enlightenment. At that moment, Siddhartha became the Buddha, the awakened one, and began to teach others the path to enlightenment. The Buddha's teachings, which form the foundation of Buddhism, are centered around the Four Noble Truths. These truths address the nature of suffering, its causes, its cessation, and the path to its cessation, the Noble Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path consists of right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These principles aim to guide individuals toward ethical living, mental discipline, and wisdom. Over time, these teachings spread throughout India and beyond, leading to the development of various schools and sects of Buddhism. The split between Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism is not an arbitrary distinction. It is the result of centuries of philosophical, cultural, and geographical developments. The early history of Buddhism saw the formation of many different schools, with debates over interpretations of the Buddha's teachings. As Buddhism spread to different parts of Asia, the religious and cultural contexts shaped the way in which the teachings were understood and practiced, ultimately giving rise to the two dominant schools we know today, Theravada and Mahayana. Theravada, which means teaching of the elders, is considered the more conservative of the two schools. It emphasizes adherence to the original teachings of the Buddha, with a focus on individual enlightenment. Theravada Buddhism is primarily practiced in Southeast Asia, including countries like Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia. One of the central tenets of Theravada is the notion of arhatship, the attainment of nirvana by individuals who have followed the teachings of the Buddha and have achieved spiritual liberation. In this school, monks play a central role, as it is believed that only through monastic life can one achieve the necessary discipline and concentration to reach enlightenment. Theravada Buddhists place a great deal of importance on the Pali Canon, which is considered the most authoritative scripture in this tradition. The Pali Canon is a collection of texts that contain the teachings of the Buddha as recorded by his followers. It is written in Pali, a language closely related to Sanskrit, and contains three main sections: the Vinaya Pitaka, rules for monastic discipline; the Sutta Pitaka, discourses of the Buddha; and the Abhidhamma Pitaka, philosophical and psychological analysis of the Buddha's teachings. These texts form the foundation for Theravada practice, with a strong emphasis on meditation and the cultivation of wisdom. In Theravada Buddhism, the path to enlightenment is largely seen as a solitary journey. The ultimate goal is to become an arhat, someone who has attained nirvana and is no longer subject to the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara, while the concept of bodhisattvas, or enlightened beings who remain in the world to help others, exists within Theravada. It is not as central to the practice as it is in Mahayana. This is one of the key distinctions between the two branches of Buddhism. Mahayana, which means great vehicle, emerged around the 1st century BCE in India and gradually spread to Central Asia, China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. Mahayana Buddhism is often seen as more inclusive and diverse, with a greater emphasis on the collective nature of enlightenment. Unlike Theravada, Mahayana Buddhism teaches that the path to enlightenment is not just for monks and ascetics, but for all beings, regardless of their social status or gender. The Mahayana school emphasizes the concept of the Bodhisattva, a being who has attained enlightenment but chooses to remain in the world to help others achieve liberation. The Bodhisattva ideal is central to Mahayana practice, and followers aspire to cultivate compassion and wisdom to benefit all sentient beings. Mahayana Buddhists accept a broader range of scriptures than Theravada, including the Mahayana Sutras. These texts contain teachings and stories that expand on the Buddha's original teachings, offering new insights and methods for achieving enlightenment. Among the most famous of these texts is the Lotus Sutra, which emphasizes the universal potential for enlightenment and the idea that all beings, regardless of their circumstances, can attain Buddhahood. In Mahayana, the emphasis is on helping others reach enlightenment, not just oneself. The ideal of the Bodhisattva is seen as a compassionate and selfless approach to liberation, and Mahayana practitioners strive to embody these qualities in their daily lives. While both Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism share the same basic principles of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, the differences in practice and philosophy are significant. Theravada tends to focus on the individual's quest for enlightenment, while Mahayana emphasizes the importance of collective liberation and the Bodhisattva ideal. The difference in approach to the goal of enlightenment can be seen as a reflection of the broader cultural and philosophical differences between the regions where each school developed. Theravada, with its emphasis on monasticism and individual attainment, is closely tied to the cultures of Southeast Asia, where strict monastic discipline and a focus on individual salvation have long been important. Mahayana, on the other hand, with its more inclusive approach and emphasis on compassion, has found a home in East Asia, where communal values and social responsibility are often emphasized. To better understand these differences, it is helpful to look at some real-world examples. In Thailand, for instance, Theravada Buddhism is practiced in a very traditional way. Monks in Thailand follow a strict daily routine of meditation, study, and community service. The focus is on individual discipline, with the ultimate goal of attaining nirvana. In contrast, in Japan, Mahayana Buddhism is practiced in a variety of forms, including Zen, Pure Land, and Nichiren Buddhism. These different schools emphasize different aspects of the practice, but they all share a commitment to helping others achieve enlightenment. In Zen, for example, practitioners seek to awaken to their true nature through meditation and mindfulness, while in Pure Land Buddhism, followers focus on devotion to Amitabha Buddha, with the hope of being reborn in his Pure Land. These cultural differences highlight the adaptability and diversity of Buddhism. Both Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism offer valuable insights into the nature of suffering, the path to liberation, and the cultivation of wisdom and compassion. The key takeaway is that, while the two branches differ in their practices and philosophies, They both offer powerful tools for personal and collective transformation. Whether through the solitary discipline of Theravada or the compassionate outreach of Mahayana, Buddhism provides a path toward inner peace, understanding, and enlightenment. Ultimately, both schools remind us that the path to enlightenment is not a one-size-fits-all journey. Each person's path may look different, but the principles of Buddhism offer a universal guide to living a life of wisdom, compassion, and mindfulness. By understanding the origins and teachings of these two major Buddhist traditions, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the rich diversity of Buddhist practice and the profound impact it has had on the world. Buddhism emerged during a pivotal moment in Indian history, marked by the Shramana movement, which began around the 6th century BCE. The Shramanas were a group of spiritual seekers who sought alternatives to the established religious and social systems of the time, primarily dominated by Brahmanism. This period was characterized by a growing discontent with the hierarchical and ritualistic nature of the Vedic religion, which had evolved into Brahmanism. In a society where power was largely concentrated in the hands of Brahmins, the priestly class, many people began to feel the need for a more personal and accessible spiritual path, one that could provide individual liberation from suffering, free from the constraints of caste and ritual. The Vedic religion, which had been the dominant spiritual system in India for centuries, was built around complex rituals, sacrifices, and the authority of the Brahmins. It emphasized the performance of sacred rites to appease the gods and ensure cosmic order. However, over time, the system became increasingly controlled by a small, elite group of priests, leading to a sense of exclusivity and detachment from the everyday lives of the common people. In this environment, the Shramanas rejected the dominance of the Brahmanic priesthood, seeking a more personal, direct experience of spirituality. They turned away from external rituals and instead focused on inner discipline, meditation, and ascetic practices in their pursuit of enlightenment and liberation from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara. This rejection of traditional religious practices laid the foundation for the rise of several non-Brahmanical religious movements, including Jainism and, most notably, Buddhism. Among the Shramanas, Siddhartha Gautama, later known as the Buddha, emerged as the most influential figure. Siddhartha's life and teachings provide a powerful example of how Buddhism arose as a reaction to the existing religious structures. Born into a royal family in what is now Nepal, Siddhartha was shielded from the harsh realities of life. However, upon encountering the suffering of old age, disease, and death, he was deeply moved and sought a way to overcome these afflictions that all people face. Siddhartha's quest for answers led him to explore both extreme indulgence and severe asceticism, but he found neither path to be effective in leading to true liberation. In his early years, he enjoyed the comforts and pleasures of royal life, but as he encountered suffering, he realized that indulgence could not provide the lasting peace and freedom from suffering that he sought. Similarly, he spent years practicing extreme asceticism, depriving himself of food and sleep in an effort to attain spiritual insight. Yet, he found that these extreme practices also failed to provide the wisdom and understanding necessary for true enlightenment. At the age of 35, Siddhartha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, an event that marks the birth of Buddhism. In this moment of deep meditation, he realized the nature of suffering and the path to its cessation. His enlightenment was not just an intellectual realization, but a profound shift in his consciousness, allowing him to perceive the world in a completely new way. Siddhartha's experience of enlightenment was not a divine revelation, but rather the culmination of years of intense meditation, introspection, and understanding of the nature of the mind and existence. This moment of insight, which is referred to as the Buddha's awakening, was the beginning of his teaching mission and the foundation for the Buddhist philosophy that would follow. After his enlightenment, Siddhartha began to teach others the insights he had gained. He formulated the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, which serve as the core principles of Buddhist teaching. The Four Noble Truths outline the nature of suffering, its causes, its cessation, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. The first truth, the truth of suffering, dukkha, acknowledges that suffering is an inherent part of human existence. Birth, aging, sickness, and death are all inevitable experiences that lead to suffering. Even pleasure and happiness are fleeting and subject to change, leading to a sense of dissatisfaction and unease. This universal experience of suffering is something that all people share, regardless of their social status or circumstances. The second truth, the truth of the cause of suffering, Samadaya, explains that suffering arises from attachment, craving, and ignorance. People suffer because they cling to things that are temporary and impermanent, such as wealth, status, and even relationships. This craving for things that cannot last creates an ongoing cycle of dissatisfaction. Ignorance, or misunderstanding the true nature of reality, is at the root of this craving. People mistakenly believe that the things they desire will bring lasting happiness, but in reality, these things are transient and subject to change. The third truth, the truth of the cessation of suffering, Nirodha, reveals that it is possible to end suffering by letting go of attachment, craving, and ignorance. This cessation of suffering is not an abstract concept but a practical reality that can be experienced in one's lifetime. By overcoming ignorance and attachment, individuals can attain a state of liberation known as nirvana, a state of inner peace, freedom from suffering, and the end of the cycle of rebirth. The fourth truth, the truth of the path to the cessation of suffering, Magga, outlines the method for achieving liberation. The Eightfold Path is the practical guide that leads individuals toward enlightenment. It consists of 8 interconnected factors that help cultivate ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. These factors are right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Each element of the Eightfold Path works together to transform an individual's actions, thoughts, and perceptions, helping them overcome the causes of suffering and move toward liberation. The Eightfold Path emphasizes the importance of balance and moderation. It encourages individuals to cultivate right understanding of the world, to act with compassion and integrity, to develop mindfulness and concentration, and to seek wisdom through direct experience, rather than relying on external rituals or reliance on a divine being. Buddhism teaches that individuals have the ability to liberate themselves through their own efforts and understanding. The middle way, which the Buddha advocated, is not about self-indulgence or extreme asceticism, but rather finding a balanced approach to life that fosters inner peace and spiritual development. The teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, were revolutionary in their simplicity and practicality. He offered a spiritual path that was open to all, regardless of their social standing or religious background. Unlike the rigid caste system that dominated ancient India, Buddhism emphasized the possibility of spiritual growth for everyone. The Buddha's rejection of ritualistic practices, his focus on individual experience, and his emphasis on meditation and mindfulness marked a departure from the established religious norms of the time. Buddhism offered a path to enlightenment that was grounded in personal effort, self-discipline, and understanding, rather than external validation or hierarchical structures. Over time, the teachings of the Buddha spread throughout India and beyond. Buddhism's message of liberation from suffering resonated with people from all walks of life, and it began to attract followers from various regions and cultures. The Buddha's insistence on personal responsibility and inner transformation struck a chord with those who sought a deeper understanding of themselves and the world around them. As Buddhism spread, it adapted to different cultural contexts, giving rise to different schools of thought and practices. Yet, the core teachings of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path remain central to the practice of Buddhism, providing a foundation for millions of people seeking to end suffering and attain enlightenment. The origins of Buddhism are deeply rooted in the Shramana movement and the desire for a more personal and accessible spiritual path. Siddhartha Gautama, through his rejection of both indulgence and asceticism, developed a philosophy that emphasized moderation, mindfulness, and inner transformation. His teachings, encapsulated in the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, offer a clear and practical roadmap for overcoming suffering and achieving liberation. Buddhism's focus on individual effort, personal responsibility, and the potential for transformation has made it one of the most enduring and widely practiced spiritual traditions in the world today. The Buddha's teachings, while profound and revolutionary, were not immediately transcribed into written texts after his death. Instead, they were passed down orally by his followers. This method of transmission, which was common in ancient cultures, ensured that the teachings remained intact and unaltered for several generations. However, the oral tradition also carried with it the risk of distortion or loss, which prompted the need for formal preservation. The first Buddhist council, convened around 480 BCE shortly after the Buddha's death, played a pivotal role in the preservation of his teachings. This council aimed to compile and systematize the Buddha's words, ensuring that his teachings would endure for future generations. The council was composed of several of the Buddha's closest disciples, who gathered to recite the teachings and agree on their accurate transmission. It was held at Rajgir, a prominent city in ancient India, and its primary goal was to safeguard the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, and the Vinaya, the rules governing monastic life, from being misinterpreted or lost. At this council, an elder monk named Ananda, who was known for his remarkable memory and close association with the Buddha, recited the discourses he had heard from the Buddha directly. Another monk, Upali, recited the monastic rules. These recitations formed the foundation of what would later become the Pali Canon, which is still regarded as one of the oldest and most authoritative collections of Buddhist scriptures. Despite the efforts of the First Council, disagreements regarding the interpretation and transmission of the Buddha's teachings arose in subsequent years. Different regions, schools of thought, and interpretations of the Dharma began to emerge. In response to these disagreements, the Second Buddhist Council was convened, possibly around 100 years after the Buddha's death, in order to address the various interpretations that were beginning to form. This council was held at Vaishali and primarily focused on issues of monastic discipline and the Vinaya. It is here that the first significant schism in Buddhism occurred. The council's deliberations led to a split between the more conservative faction of the Sangha, who upheld the original teachings and practices, and the more liberal faction, who sought to adapt the Buddhist teachings to new social and cultural realities. The conservative faction, which believed that the true teachings of the Buddha were preserved in their original form, eventually became the Theravada school. The more liberal faction, which was more open to new interpretations and practices, eventually gave rise to the Mahayana tradition. The division between Theravada and Mahayana marked the beginning of two major branches of Buddhism, each with distinct beliefs, practices, and interpretations of the Buddha's teachings. Theravada, which means teaching of the elders, places great emphasis on adhering to the original teachings of the Buddha, as preserved in the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon, a collection of scriptures in the Pali language, is considered by Theravada Buddhists to be the most faithful and authentic representation of the Buddha's teachings. The focus of Theravada Buddhism is on the path of the Arhat, or worthy one, who seeks to attain personal liberation, nirvana, through their own efforts. Following the Eightfold Path outlined by the Buddha, Theravada Buddhists view the Buddha as a supreme teacher, but not as a divine figure. Their emphasis is on the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, and his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. The ultimate goal of a Theravada practitioner is to follow the Buddha's example and attain nirvana, thereby ending the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara. This path requires dedication to ethical conduct, meditation, and wisdom, and is considered a challenging and rigorous pursuit. In contrast, the Mahayana school, which means great vehicle, emerged as a more inclusive and expansive interpretation of Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism sought to make the Buddha's teachings accessible to a broader range of people, not just monks and ascetics. One of the key differences between Mahayana and Theravada is the concept of the Bodhisattva. In Mahayana Buddhism, the Bodhisattva is a being who has achieved enlightenment but chooses to remain in the cycle of samsara in order to help others attain liberation. The Bodhisattva ideal is centered on compassion and selfless service to others, and it emphasizes that enlightenment is not an individual pursuit, but a collective one. Mahayana Buddhists believe that all beings have the potential to become Buddhas, and that through the cultivation of compassion and wisdom, anyone can achieve Buddhahood. This makes Mahayana Buddhism more inclusive, as it encourages lay people, as well as monks, to participate in the path toward enlightenment. In contrast to the Theravada focus on the Arhat, Mahayana Buddhism emphasizes the Bodhisattva path, with the goal of achieving Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. The schism between Theravada and Mahayana led to significant differences in both doctrine and practice. In addition to differing views on the nature of the Buddha and the path to enlightenment, the two traditions also diverged in their understanding of the scriptures. While Theravada Buddhism relies primarily on the Pali Canon, Mahayana Buddhism incorporates a wider range of texts, many of which were written in Sanskrit. These texts, such as the Lotus Sutra, the Heart Sutra, and the Diamond Sutra, introduce new concepts, such as the Bodhisattva ideal and the notion of emptiness, shunyata, which were not emphasized in the Pali Canon. The expansion of the Buddhist scriptures in the Mahayana tradition also reflects the broader and more inclusive nature of Mahayana Buddhism, whereas Theravada Buddhism tends to focus on the teachings of the historical Buddha. Mahayana texts often include stories of other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as well as elaborate metaphysical and cosmological concepts. These texts are seen by Mahayana Buddhists as being more suited to the needs of the lay practitioner, who may not have the time or inclination to engage in the intense meditation and ascetic practices required by the Theravada path. Despite the differences between Theravada and Mahayana, both traditions share a common commitment to the core teachings of the Buddha, particularly the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Both traditions also emphasize the importance of meditation, mindfulness, and ethical conduct as essential practices for cultivating wisdom, compassion, and inner peace. In addition to these two major schools, there are also other branches of Buddhism, including Vajrayana, which developed later and is closely associated with Tibetan Buddhism. Vajrayana Buddhism incorporates elements of both Mahayana and Theravada, but it also introduces new practices, such as the use of mantras, rituals, and visualizations, to achieve enlightenment more rapidly. The formation of Buddhist scriptures, particularly the division of texts between the Pali Canon and the Mahayana Sutras, played a crucial role in shaping the development of the various schools of Buddhism. These scriptures not only preserve the teachings of the Buddha, but also provide a roadmap for practitioners seeking to follow his path toward enlightenment. As Buddhism spread across Asia and beyond, these scriptures became the foundation for countless generations of Buddhists, who have drawn on their wisdom to guide their practice and understanding of the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha's teachings, passed down through oral tradition and eventually compiled into scriptures, form the backbone of Buddhist practice and philosophy. The division of Buddhism into different schools, particularly Theravada and Mahayana, reflects the diverse ways in which the teachings of the Buddha have been interpreted and practiced over the centuries. While these schools may differ in their approach, they all share a common goal: to help individuals overcome suffering and attain enlightenment. The ongoing study and interpretation of Buddhist scriptures continue to play a vital role in the evolution of Buddhism, as new generations of practitioners seek to apply the Buddha's teachings to the challenges of modern life. Theravada Buddhism, often known as Southern Buddhism, is practiced primarily in countries like Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia. The term Theravada translates to teaching of the elders, highlighting its foundation in the earliest interpretations of the Buddha's teachings. The tradition is deeply rooted in the Pali Canon, which contains the core scriptures of Theravada Buddhism. This collection of texts is divided into three main sections: the Vinaya Pitaka, the Sutta Pitaka, and the Abhidhamma Pitaka. Each of these Pitakas serves a distinct purpose in preserving the Buddha's teachings, laws, and philosophical ideas. The Vinaya Pitaka outlines the rules and regulations for the monastic community, specifically for monks and nuns, who play a central role in the Theravada tradition. These rules cover everything from how monks should dress, how they should interact with lay people, and how they should conduct themselves in both communal and solitary settings. They are designed to maintain the purity of the monastic community and ensure that practitioners can focus on their spiritual development without being distracted by worldly matters. The Vinaya Pitaka emphasizes the importance of discipline, ethical conduct, and personal responsibility in the path to enlightenment. The Sutta Pitaka is the largest section of the Pali Canon and contains the Buddha's discourses on a wide range of topics, including ethics, meditation, wisdom, and the nature of existence. It is here that the Buddha's core teachings, such as the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, are found. These teachings serve as the foundation for Theravada practice and are regarded as the most direct and accessible way to understand the path to enlightenment. In the Sutta Pitaka, the Buddha offers practical advice for overcoming suffering, achieving mental clarity, and cultivating wisdom, all of which are essential for liberation. The third section of the Pali Canon, the Abhidhamma Pitaka, is the most philosophical and doctrinal part of the scriptures. It contains detailed analyses of the nature of the mind, consciousness, and the processes of perception and thought. The Abhidhamma Pitaka delves into the subtleties of Buddhist psychology and metaphysics, offering a framework for understanding the mind's inner workings. This section is often studied by advanced practitioners and scholars, as it provides a deeper, more analytical understanding of the Buddhist teachings. Theravada Buddhism places a significant emphasis on the monastic community, with monks and nuns seen as the ideal practitioners of the path to enlightenment. In this tradition, the path to nirvana is viewed as one that is best pursued through monastic life, where one can fully dedicate themselves to meditation, ethical conduct, and the study of the Buddha's teachings. While laypeople can also practice Buddhism, their role is generally seen as secondary to that of the monastics, who are regarded as the true keepers of the Dharma. The role of the monastic community in Theravada Buddhism cannot be overstated. Monks and nuns are considered to have taken the most serious step toward liberation, having renounced worldly attachments and devoted themselves entirely to spiritual practice. For lay people, supporting the monastic community is considered a key element of their spiritual practice. Lay Buddhists often offer food, clothing, and other necessities to monks and nuns, in return for which they receive merit that is believed to help improve their future lives and bring them closer to enlightenment. In Theravada tradition, the process of becoming a monk is a major life decision, and it involves extensive training and commitment. Monks begin their journey by receiving ordination, where they take vows to live according to the rules outlined in the Vinaya Pitaka. These rules include celibacy, renunciation of material possessions, and a commitment to mindfulness, meditation, and ethical conduct. Once ordained, monks live in monastic communities, where they follow a strict daily schedule of meditation, study, and communal activities. The ideal of the monastic life in Theravada Buddhism is one of simplicity and austerity, where distractions from the spiritual path are minimized in order to cultivate the necessary concentration and mindfulness for enlightenment. The path to enlightenment in Theravada Buddhism is largely individual. The tradition emphasizes the cultivation of wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline as essential elements of the journey. The Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path form the cornerstone of Theravada practice. The Four Noble Truths provide an understanding of suffering, dukkha, its causes, and the path to its cessation. The Eightfold Path offers a practical guide to living a life that leads to the cessation of suffering. These teachings are not theoretical. They are intended to be practiced in everyday life, with the goal of transforming one's mind and behavior in order to reduce suffering and attain nirvana. The Eightfold Path, in particular, provides a comprehensive approach to ethical living. It includes right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Each of these elements is seen as interdependent, and together they form a holistic approach to living in a way that is aligned with the Buddhist teachings. By following the Eightfold Path, a practitioner gradually transforms their mental and emotional habits, developing greater wisdom, compassion, and tranquility. This process ultimately leads to the realization of nirvana, the state of liberation from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara. One of the distinguishing features of Theravada Buddhism is its focus on meditation as a means of achieving enlightenment. Meditation is central to the Theravada tradition, and practitioners engage in two primary forms of meditation: samatha, calm meditation, and vipassana, insight meditation. Samatha meditation involves focusing the mind on a single object, such as the breath, in order to calm the mind and develop concentration. Vipassana meditation, on the other hand, is aimed at developing insight into the true nature of reality. Through vipassana, practitioners come to understand the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of all phenomena, which leads to the cessation of suffering. Both samatha and vipassana meditation are considered indispensable tools for advancing on the path to enlightenment. Through regular meditation practice, practitioners develop the mental clarity and wisdom necessary to overcome the mental defilements such as greed, hatred, and delusion that perpetuates suffering. By seeing things as they truly are, a practitioner can gradually overcome attachment and aversion, leading to a state of equanimity and inner peace. While the Theravada tradition is often seen as more austere and individualistic in its approach to the path of enlightenment, it is also characterized by a deep sense of compassion and community. The monastic community plays an essential role in the spiritual life of the broader Buddhist community, and the relationship between laypeople and monastics is one of mutual support. Lay Buddhists seek to cultivate virtues such as generosity, morality, and mindfulness in their daily lives, while monastics dedicate themselves to meditation and study. Through this symbiotic relationship, both monastics and laypeople can progress on the path to enlightenment. Theravada Buddhism is also marked by a strong emphasis on preserving the original teachings of the Buddha. As mentioned earlier, the Pali Canon is the central scripture in Theravada, and it is considered by Theravada Buddhists to be the most faithful representation of the Buddhist teachings. Theravada Buddhists view the Pali Canon as a direct link to the historical Buddha, and they take great care to preserve its teachings in their original form. The tradition holds that by adhering closely to the teachings found in the Pali Canon, practitioners can ensure that they are following the true path to enlightenment. As taught by the Buddha himself, Theravada Buddhism has had a profound influence on the countries where it is practiced, shaping not only religious life, but also the culture and social structures of these societies. In countries like Thailand and Sri Lanka, Buddhism is deeply embedded in the national identity, and Buddhist values such as mindfulness, generosity, and compassion are central to daily life. In these societies, temples and monasteries serve as important centers for spiritual and social life, and the monastic community plays a key role in preserving cultural traditions and offering spiritual guidance to the broader population. While Theravada Buddhism has its roots in ancient India, it has adapted and evolved over the centuries, taking on unique characteristics in the countries where it is practiced. In Thailand, for example, the monastic community plays a central role in the cultural and political life of the country, with monks often acting as advisors to political leaders. In Sri Lanka, Theravada Buddhism is closely intertwined with the nation's history and identity, and the country's many temples and monasteries are important symbols of national pride. Despite these regional variations, the core teachings and practices of Theravada Buddhism remain the same, providing a path to enlightenment that emphasizes individual effort, meditation, and ethical conduct. The Theravada tradition continues to be a vital and influential force in the lives of millions of Buddhists around the world, offering a clear and direct path to liberation from suffering. Mahayana Buddhism, often translated as the Greater Vehicle, represents a significant development within the broader Buddhist tradition. It arose around the 1st century CE, centuries after the emergence of Theravada Buddhism, and can be seen as both a response to and a departure from the teachings of the earlier school. Mahayana offers a more expansive and inclusive vision of the path to enlightenment, incorporating a wide range of beliefs, practices, and scriptures. It challenges the Theravada view by providing a broader, more egalitarian approach to spiritual liberation, particularly through the Bodhisattva path. Mahayana Buddhism is often described as a more inclusive form of Buddhism compared to Theravada, which focuses primarily on the monastic community and emphasizes individual enlightenment. In Mahayana, the path to enlightenment is not solely for monks or advanced practitioners, but is open to all beings, including lay people. This inclusivity is a key feature that sets Mahayana apart. While Theravada encourages renunciation of worldly life and dedication to monasticism, Mahayana Buddhism suggests that one can attain Buddhahood while still engaging fully with the world. It allows lay practitioners to pursue the same ultimate goal of enlightenment, making it more accessible to a broader range of people. One of the central tenets of Mahayana Buddhism is the belief in the Bodhisattva path. A Bodhisattva is a being who has achieved a high level of spiritual realization but has chosen to remain in the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara, in order to help all sentient beings achieve enlightenment. This vow to assist others is rooted in the idea that enlightenment is not a solitary endeavor, but a collective one. The Bodhisattva's commitment is to attain Buddhahood not just for themselves, but for the benefit of all beings. This path is marked by immense compassion, selflessness, and the desire to alleviate the suffering of others. The Bodhisattva vow is central to the Mahayana ethos, in contrast to the Arhat ideal of Theravada, where the goal is to reach nirvana through personal effort. The Bodhisattva aims to achieve Buddhahood while continuing to assist others in their spiritual journeys. This practice is rooted in the concept of compassion, karuna, and loving kindness, metta, which are central to Mahayana teachings. The Bodhisattva's compassion is boundless, and their wisdom is applied not only for personal enlightenment, but also for the enlightenment of others. This radical shift from the Theravada focus on individual liberation to the Mahayana focus on universal salvation sets Mahayana apart as a more altruistic and community-oriented path. Mahayana Buddhism is deeply rooted in the idea of interdependence, which holds that all beings are connected and that the actions of one affect the whole. This interconnectedness is illustrated by the Bodhisattva's vow, which emphasizes the interdependence of all sentient beings in the cycle of samsara. The Bodhisattva does not attain enlightenment for themselves alone, but chooses to remain in the world to help others. This path is not an easy one, and the Bodhisattva must work through countless lifetimes to develop the necessary qualities of wisdom, compassion, and skillful means to help all beings achieve liberation. The Mahayana scriptures, or the Mahayana Sutras, are another key feature of the tradition. These texts are vast and diverse, offering a wide array of teachings on a variety of subjects, from philosophy and meditation to ethics and the nature of reality. The Mahayana Sutras include well-known texts like the Lotus Sutra, the Heart Sutra, and the Diamond Sutra. These scriptures are seen as a direct transmission of the Buddha's teachings, but they differ from the Pali Canon of Theravada in both content and form. One of the most notable differences is the way in which the Mahayana Sutras present the Buddha. In Mahayana, the Buddha is often seen as a transcendent, eternal being who is not confined to a single historical figure. This concept of the Buddha as an omnipresent, cosmic entity contrasts with the Theravada view of the Buddha as a human being who achieved enlightenment through his own efforts. The Mahayana Sutras were initially kept secret and only revealed to certain advanced practitioners. According to Mahayana tradition, this secrecy added an element of mysticism and exclusivity to the tradition, with the idea that the teachings contained in the sutras were too profound for ordinary people to understand. Over time, however, these teachings were made more widely available, and the Mahayana tradition expanded rapidly across Asia, particularly in regions like China, Japan, Korea, and Tibet. Mahayana Buddhism places a strong emphasis on the practice of compassion and the aspiration to help all sentient beings. The concept of the Bodhisattva ideal is grounded in the belief that the greatest act of wisdom is to work for the liberation of others. In this way, Mahayana encourages practitioners to cultivate both wisdom and compassion in equal measure. While wisdom, prajna, is necessary for understanding the nature of reality and attaining enlightenment, compassion, karuna, is what drives a bodhisattva to take action to alleviate the suffering of others. These two qualities, wisdom and compassion, are seen as inseparable and complementary. A bodhisattva is a being who embodies both qualities to the highest degree, using their wisdom to guide their compassionate actions. In practice, Mahayana Buddhists often engage in various forms of meditation, chanting, and ritual to develop these qualities. Meditation practices in Mahayana can include both shamatha, calm abiding, and vipassana, insight, meditation. But there is also a strong emphasis on the practice of tonglen, or giving and taking meditation, where practitioners visualize taking on the suffering of others and giving them happiness and peace. This practice embodies the Bodhisattva's commitment to alleviate suffering and transform it into compassion. Mahayana Buddhism also offers a broader range of philosophical teachings compared to Theravada. One of the key concepts in Mahayana thought is emptiness, shunyata, which refers to the idea that all things are empty of inherent existence. This teaching is rooted in the Buddhist understanding of impermanence and the interconnectedness of all phenomena. Emptiness does not mean that things do not exist, but rather that they do not have an inherent, independent existence. Everything is interdependent and constantly changing. The understanding of emptiness is considered a crucial aspect of the Mahayana path, as it allows practitioners to break free from attachment and delusion. The teaching of emptiness is closely linked to the idea of dependent origination, pratityasamutpada, which is the understanding that all things arise due to causes and conditions. In this way, nothing exists in isolation, and everything is part of a vast, interconnected web of life. The realization of emptiness and dependent origination is said to lead to the cessation of suffering and the attainment of Buddhahood. Another key concept in Mahayana Buddhism is the practice of skillful means, upaya, which refers to the use of various methods or teachings tailored to the needs of different beings. The Buddha is said to have used skillful means to teach the Dharma in a way that would be most effective for the people he encountered. For example, he may have used different teachings for different audiences, depending on their level of understanding or spiritual development. This approach allows for greater flexibility and creativity in how the teachings are presented, making the Dharma more accessible to a wider range of people. Mahayana Buddhism also emphasizes the importance of Buddha nature, the inherent potential for all beings to attain Buddhahood. According to Mahayana teachings, all sentient beings possess the seed of Buddhahood within them, and it is only through the cultivation of wisdom and compassion that this potential can be fully realized. The belief in Buddha nature is closely related to the Bodhisattva ideal, as it implies that everyone has the potential to become a Buddha and help others achieve the same. In terms of practice, Mahayana Buddhism has a rich variety of rituals, teachings, and devotional practices. These can include the recitation of sutras, the offering of prayers, the visualization of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and the practice of chanting mantras. Each of these practices is intended to help practitioners cultivate the qualities necessary to attain Buddhahood, while also fostering a deep sense of connection with the community of practitioners. For Mahayana Buddhists, the ultimate goal is not just personal liberation, but the liberation of all beings. This vision of universal salvation is what makes Mahayana Buddhism distinctive, offering a path that is as much about helping others as it is about personal enlightenment. Mahayana Buddhism has had a profound impact on the countries where it has flourished, particularly in East Asia. In countries like China, Japan, Korea, and Tibet, Mahayana teachings and practices have shaped religious, cultural, and social life. Temples, shrines, and monasteries dedicated to Mahayana Buddhism can be found throughout these regions, and the practice of Buddhism is often integrated into daily life. The Bodhisattva ideal, with its emphasis on compassion and altruism, has also influenced the broader culture, encouraging a sense of responsibility for others and the world. Overall, Mahayana Buddhism offers a more expansive and inclusive vision of the Buddhist path, one that emphasizes the importance of compassion, the potential for all beings to attain enlightenment, and the interconnectedness of all life. It is a path that seeks to transcend individual liberation and focuses on the collective liberation of all beings, offering a profound and transformative approach to Buddhist practice and philosophy. In Mahayana Buddhism, One of the most profound and defining features is the Bodhisattva ideal, which fundamentally differentiates it from other forms of Buddhism, particularly Theravada. The Bodhisattva is a being who has attained a high level of spiritual realization, often seen as enlightenment, but instead of entering nirvana, they choose to remain in samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, in order to help all sentient beings achieve liberation. This selfless commitment to assisting others on their spiritual path is central to the Mahayana worldview and deeply influences its practices and teachings, in contrast to the Theravada ideal, where monks and practitioners primarily aim to achieve personal liberation, nirvana, and escape the cycle of samsara. Mahayana Buddhism offers a more expansive vision of enlightenment. It is not just about individual salvation, but about a universal compassion that extends to all beings. The Bodhisattva's path is one of active engagement with the world, and their vow to remain in samsara is not out of necessity, but out of a profound sense of compassion and responsibility for others. This contrasts sharply with the more individualistic approach of Theravada, where the focus is primarily on personal liberation. The Bodhisattva ideal emphasizes compassion, karuna, and wisdom, prajna, as its twin pillars. Compassion is what drives the Bodhisattva to help others, while wisdom enables them to see the true nature of reality. The Bodhisattva's journey involves developing both of these qualities to the highest degree, with the ultimate goal being to assist all sentient beings in reaching enlightenment. This is encapsulated in the Bodhisattva vow, which is a solemn promise to delay one's own complete enlightenment in order to help others achieve it first. This ideal also opens up the possibility for every sentient being, not just monks or enlightened individuals, to take on the role of a bodhisattva. In Mahayana, it is believed that all beings have the potential for Buddhahood, and by embodying the qualities of the bodhisattva, they can contribute to the liberation of others. This inclusive nature is one of the defining aspects of Mahayana, in contrast to the more ascetic and exclusive nature of Theravada, where the monastic life is seen as the only valid path to enlightenment. The Bodhisattva path is closely linked to the Mahayana vision of emptiness, shunyata, and dependent origination, pratityasamutpada, understanding emptiness, which means that all phenomena are interdependent and lack inherent. Independent existence is crucial for the Bodhisattva's compassion. When one understands that all beings are interconnected and that suffering is a shared experience, compassion naturally arises. This understanding helps the Bodhisattva to act skillfully, using wisdom to guide their compassion in ways that benefit all sentient beings. The Bodhisattva's actions are not driven by personal desire or attachment, but by a deep understanding of the impermanent and interdependent nature of existence. As Mahayana Buddhism spread across Asia, the Bodhisattva ideal became a central theme, influencing not just religious practice but also cultural and societal norms. The spread of Mahayana Buddhism to China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam brought with it a variety of interpretations of the Bodhisattva path, which helped shape the diverse schools within the Mahayana tradition. In China, Mahayana Buddhism took root in the form of several schools, each with its own emphasis on different aspects of the path. One of the most prominent schools to emerge was Chan Buddhism, which later developed into Zen in Japan. Chan Buddhism, in particular, emphasizes meditation, dhyana, as the primary means of attaining direct experience of enlightenment. Unlike other schools that focus heavily on scripture and ritual, Chan practitioners place less emphasis on intellectual study and more on the direct, personal experience of the present moment. This emphasis on meditation and mindfulness reflects the Bodhisattva ideal of realizing enlightenment for the benefit of all beings, but it does so through a practical and experiential approach. Zen, as a derivative of Chan, further developed the notion of just sitting or zazen, where practitioners sit in meditation, focusing their attention on the present moment. This form of meditation is seen as a direct path to experiencing one's true nature, which is said to be inherently enlightened. The Zen tradition embodies the Bodhisattva's compassion by offering a direct, non-conceptual experience of reality that cuts through the intellectual and ritualistic aspects of Buddhism. Zen monks, like bodhisattvas, are encouraged to engage deeply with the world around them, helping others attain enlightenment through their own direct experience of reality. In Japan, the spread of Mahayana Buddhism was also marked by the establishment of the Pure Land School, another Mahayana tradition that emphasizes devotion to Amitabha Buddha. The Pure Land School teaches that through the recitation of Amitabha's name, practitioners can be reborn in the Western Pure Land, a realm where it is easier to attain enlightenment. This school, unlike Zen or Chan, places more emphasis on devotion and faith, reflecting a slightly different interpretation of the Bodhisattva ideal. While Zen focuses on meditation and direct experience, Pure Land Buddhism focuses on the compassion of Amitabha Buddha, whose vow is to ensure that all beings who call upon his name can be reborn in the Pure Land, where they can more easily attain enlightenment. In Vietnam, Mahayana Buddhism also took root, with significant influence from both Chinese and Tibetan traditions. Vietnamese Mahayana practitioners often incorporate elements of both meditation and devotion, reflecting the flexibility and adaptability of Mahayana Buddhism. In Vietnam, the Bodhisattva ideal is closely tied to social engagement, with many Buddhist organizations focusing on charitable work and social justice as expressions of compassion. The Bodhisattva path is not just a personal spiritual journey, but also a call to action in the world, emphasizing the importance of helping others in practical, everyday ways. As Mahayana Buddhism continued to spread and evolve across different regions, it adapted to local cultures and beliefs, resulting in a rich variety of practices and interpretations. However, the Bodhisattva ideal remained a constant thread, uniting the different schools under a shared vision of enlightenment that is not for the individual alone, but for all beings. This universalism, the idea that all beings have the potential for Buddhahood and that all beings are interconnected, is one of the most appealing aspects of Mahayana Buddhism. The idea that one can attain enlightenment while remaining in the world to help others is deeply resonant, particularly in a world that often feels fragmented and divided. The Bodhisattva vow, which encourages practitioners to put the needs of others before their own, offers a path to enlightenment that is not solitary but communal. It offers a model for living in the world with compassion, wisdom, and selflessness, values that are universally respected and relevant in today's society. Mahayana's emphasis on compassion also extends beyond the human realm. In Mahayana, all sentient beings, whether human, animal, or even beings in other realms, are worthy of compassion. This broadens the scope of the Bodhisattva's actions and makes the practice of Buddhism something that can be applied to every aspect of life, from how we treat the people around us to how we treat the environment and all living creatures. The spread of Mahayana Buddhism throughout East Asia left a profound impact on the religious, cultural, and social fabric of these regions. The Bodhisattva ideal, with its emphasis on compassion, altruism, and the interconnectedness of all beings, has influenced not only religious practices but also broader societal norms. In many East Asian cultures, the Bodhisattva is seen as an ideal figure who exemplifies the highest values of selflessness and compassion. The concept of the Bodhisattva has inspired countless works of art, literature, and philosophy throughout history, and continues to be a guiding light for practitioners today. Mahayana Buddhism's spread has also been facilitated by the development of a diverse range of texts, rituals, and practices that cater to a wide variety of practitioners. From monks and nuns to lay people, the vast body of Mahayana literature, including the Mahayana Sutras, offers a wealth of teachings and practices that can guide individuals on their spiritual journey. The emphasis on compassion and the Bodhisattva path encourages a deep sense of responsibility not only for one's own spiritual development, but also for the welfare of others. In conclusion, the Bodhisattva ideal in Mahayana Buddhism represents a profound shift in the way enlightenment is understood and pursued. It emphasizes the interconnectedness of all beings and the importance of compassion in the spiritual journey. The spread of Mahayana Buddhism to countries like China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam has led to the formation of various schools, each with its own unique interpretation of the Bodhisattva path. Whether through the meditative practices of Chan and Zen, the devotional practices of Pure Land Buddhism, or the social engagement of Vietnamese Mahayana. The Bodhisattva ideal remains a central and transformative concept in Mahayana Buddhism, inspiring millions of practitioners to live lives of compassion, wisdom, and selflessness. The Buddhist canon consists of the body of scriptures that encapsulate the teachings, doctrines, and practices of Buddhism. These texts provide a comprehensive guide to the spiritual journey, outlining the path to enlightenment, the nature of existence, and the way one should interact with the world. Both Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism have distinct collections of scriptures, each emphasizing different aspects of the Buddha's teachings, but both share core values rooted in the pursuit of wisdom, compassion, and liberation from suffering. The Theravada tradition relies on the Pali Canon, also known as the Tipitaka, which is considered to be the most authoritative and authentic collection of Buddhist scriptures. The Pali Canon is divided into 3 main sections, each containing a wealth of teachings that provide guidance on ethical conduct, meditation, and wisdom. The Vinaya Pitaka deals with the rules and regulations for monastic discipline, outlining the way in which monks and nuns should live their lives according to the precepts set by the Buddha. The Sutta Pitaka contains the discourses of the Buddha, offering instructions on various aspects of the Buddhist path, such as the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and the practice of mindfulness. The Abhidhamma Pitaka presents more advanced philosophical and doctrinal discussions, exploring the nature of consciousness, the mind, and the workings of the universe from a Buddhist perspective. In contrast to the Theravada tradition, Mahayana Buddhism has a more expansive and diverse collection of scriptures, which includes a broader range of texts, teachings, and practices. Mahayana scriptures are primarily concerned with the path of the Bodhisattva, the enlightened being who remains in the world to help others achieve liberation. The Mahayana Sutras are a key part of the Mahayana Canon, and they explore various aspects of the Buddhist path, including the nature of reality, the Bodhisattva's compassion, and the understanding of emptiness, shunyata. One of the most influential texts in the Mahayana tradition is the Lotus Sutra, which is often regarded as the pinnacle of Mahayana teachings. The Lotus Sutra presents the concept of the one vehicle, ekayana, which asserts that all beings, regardless of their status or background, can attain Buddhahood. The text emphasizes that the Buddha, in his infinite compassion, seeks to help all sentient beings, and it calls upon practitioners to cultivate the qualities of the Bodhisattva, particularly compassion and wisdom. The Lotus Sutra is celebrated for its powerful imagery and teachings on universal salvation, inspiring practitioners to adopt the Bodhisattva's selfless attitude toward others. The Heart Sutra is another key text in Mahayana Buddhism and is perhaps the most concise and widely recited Buddhist scripture. It is famous for its brief yet profound exploration of the concept of emptiness, shunyata, which is central to Mahayana philosophy. The Heart Sutra states that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, meaning that they do not possess independent, fixed essences. Instead, everything is interdependent and constantly changing. This realization of emptiness is said to lead to the cessation of suffering, as it allows practitioners to break free from attachment and clinging to fixed notions of self and world. The Heart Sutra is often seen as a powerful tool for meditation, helping practitioners to cultivate an understanding of emptiness and liberate themselves from mental suffering. Another important text in the Mahayana tradition is the Diamond Sutra, which is known for its exploration of wisdom and the nature of perception. The Diamond Sutra teaches that the mind and perceptions are often clouded by delusions and attachment, and it emphasizes the importance of transcending these limitations to attain a direct experience of reality. It challenges conventional notions of identity, urging practitioners to let go of fixed ideas and to see the world in a more fluid, interconnected way. Like the Heart Sutra, the Diamond Sutra emphasizes the practice of non-attachment, highlighting that true wisdom arises when we stop clinging to concepts and dualities. These Mahayana texts, while diverse in their teachings, all share a common focus on the realization of emptiness and the cultivation of compassion. They guide practitioners on the Bodhisattva path, encouraging them to engage with the world and help others in the pursuit of liberation. Mahayana scriptures also emphasize the idea of the skillful means, upaya, which refers to the ability of the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas to adapt their teachings to suit the specific needs of different beings. This concept reflects the flexibility and inclusiveness of Mahayana Buddhism, allowing it to cater to a wide range of practitioners with varying capacities and backgrounds. In addition to the classical Mahayana Sutras, Mahayana Buddhism also draws on the teachings of contemporary figures who have helped shape the tradition in modern times. One of the most influential of these figures is the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism and a prominent advocate for peace, compassion, and social justice. The Dalai Lama's teachings, while deeply rooted in the traditional Buddhist scriptures, have been instrumental in bringing Buddhist wisdom to a global audience. His writings and speeches emphasize the importance of compassion for all living beings and the need for ethical conduct in a world facing numerous challenges. From environmental degradation to political conflict, the Dalai Lama's teachings resonate with people from diverse backgrounds, offering practical guidance on how to live a more meaningful and compassionate life. Another influential modern Buddhist figure is Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese Zen master who has had a profound impact on the practice of mindfulness and engaged Buddhism. Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings focus on the cultivation of mindfulness in everyday life, encouraging practitioners to bring awareness and compassion to every moment. His work has helped to popularize mindfulness meditation in the West and has inspired millions of people to incorporate Buddhist principles into their daily routines. Thich Nhat Hanh's emphasis on peace and reconciliation, particularly in the context of the Vietnam War, has made him a leading voice for nonviolence and social harmony. His writings, such as The Miracle of Mindfulness and Peace is Every Step, have been translated into numerous languages and have had a lasting impact on both the Buddhist community and the wider world. In addition to these prominent figures, a growing number of contemporary Buddhist scholars and teachers have contributed to the development and dissemination of Buddhist teachings. Scholars such as Edward Conze, Walpola Rahula, and Robert Thurman have written extensively on Buddhist philosophy, history, and practice, providing new insights and interpretations of ancient texts. These scholars play a vital role in making Buddhist teachings more accessible to the modern world, bridging the gap between traditional Buddhism and contemporary concerns. While the core of Buddhist practice remains deeply rooted in the ancient scriptures and teachings, the modern Buddhist landscape continues to evolve. Contemporary Buddhists, both in the East and West, are increasingly drawing on a wide range of sources, including ancient texts, modern teachings, and personal experience, to cultivate their practice and understanding of the Dharma. This dynamic and ever-changing nature of Buddhism ensures that it remains a vibrant and relevant tradition in today's world. The Buddhist Canon, with its rich collection of texts and teachings, provides a comprehensive framework for understanding the nature of existence, the causes of suffering, and the path to liberation. While the Theravada and Mahayana traditions have their own distinct scriptures and interpretations, both traditions emphasize the importance of wisdom, compassion, and ethical conduct as the foundation of the Buddhist path. The vast array of Buddhist texts, from the Pali Canon to the Mahayana Sutras, offers a wealth of teachings that can guide practitioners on their journey toward enlightenment, providing them with the tools they need to cultivate mindfulness, develop compassion, and ultimately attain liberation from suffering. Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism are two distinct branches of Buddhism that, while rooted in the same fundamental teachings of the Buddha, diverge significantly in their philosophies, practices, and cultural expressions. Both traditions share the core principles of Buddhism, such as the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, yet their interpretation and application of these teachings differ. The fundamental divergence between the two schools of thought lies in their approach to the spiritual path, their view of enlightenment, and their respective emphasis on the role of the individual and the community. Theravada Buddhism, often regarded as the teaching of the elders, is considered the more conservative and orthodox school of Buddhism. It is based on the teachings found in the Pali Canon, which is thought to be the earliest and most authentic record of the Buddha's words. Theravada's focus is on monastic life and the pursuit of personal enlightenment, with an emphasis on following the Buddha's teachings as closely as possible. It emphasizes the individual's journey toward nirvana, the ultimate liberation from suffering, which is achieved by cultivating wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. For Theravada practitioners, the path to enlightenment is largely solitary, and monks and nuns play a central role in the community by dedicating themselves entirely to the practice and study of the Dharma. In contrast, Mahayana Buddhism, also known as the Great Vehicle, developed later as a more inclusive and expansive interpretation of the Buddhist teachings. It arose as a reaction to the perceived limitations of the Theravada approach, which was seen as too focused on individual liberation. Mahayana's central tenet is the Bodhisattva ideal, the aspiration to attain Buddhahood not for oneself alone, but for the sake of all sentient beings. A Bodhisattva is someone who, after achieving enlightenment, vows to remain in the cycle of birth and death, samsara, in order to help others achieve liberation. The Mahayana path, therefore, is more community-oriented and emphasizes the importance of compassion and altruism in addition to wisdom. Practitioners of Mahayana do not just aim for their own liberation, but strive to guide others along the path as well. One of the most striking differences between Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism is their treatment of the concept of emptiness, shunyata, and the nature of reality. In Mahayana Buddhism, emptiness refers to the idea that all phenomena are devoid of inherent existence, meaning that nothing exists independently or has a permanent, unchanging essence. According to Mahayana thinkers, all things are interdependent, arising in relation to one another, and subject to constant change. This view of reality allows for a more flexible and dynamic approach to Buddhist practice, where wisdom and compassion are seen as equally important aspects of the path to enlightenment. In this view, understanding the emptiness of all things leads to the realization that there is no fixed self, and that all beings are connected by the same fundamental nature. This realization, in turn, enables practitioners to cultivate greater compassion for all living beings. Theravada Buddhism, while also recognizing the concept of impermanence, anicca, and the lack of a permanent self, anatta, does not emphasize emptiness to the same degree as Mahayana. For Theravada practitioners, the focus is on understanding the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path as practical means for overcoming suffering. The Theravada approach tends to focus on the individual's path to enlightenment through meditation and ethical conduct. While compassion and wisdom are still important in Theravada Buddhism, the emphasis is more on the monastic community's role in supporting individual practice and progress. Another key difference between the two traditions is the way they view the role of lay practitioners. In Theravada Buddhism, the path to enlightenment is typically seen as best pursued through monastic life. Monks and nuns are regarded as the ideal practitioners, and the lay community is expected to support them through offerings and donations. Lay practitioners in the Theravada tradition can attain merit and progress on the path through acts of generosity, moral conduct, and meditation, but the ultimate goal of nirvana is typically reserved for monks. In Mahayana Buddhism, however, lay practitioners are seen as having an equal opportunity to attain Buddhahood. The Bodhisattva path is open to everyone, and Mahayana teachings stress that anyone, whether monk or lay person, can work to achieve enlightenment and help others along the way. This inclusivity has led to the development of various Mahayana practices that are accessible to people of all walks of life, such as chanting, devotional practices, and meditation techniques. Mahayana also introduces a wider range of devotional practices, which are less emphasized in Theravada Buddhism. For example, Mahayana Buddhism venerates a vast array of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and celestial beings who are believed to have the power to assist practitioners on their path to enlightenment. One of the most famous of these Bodhisattvas is Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, who is often depicted with many arms, symbolizing the ability to help countless beings at once. In Theravada, however, the focus remains primarily on the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, and the emphasis is on following his teachings as a means to attain nirvana. In terms of scripture, Theravada and Mahayana also differ significantly in the texts they consider authoritative. As mentioned earlier, The Pali Canon is the foundational scripture for Theravada Buddhism. This canon is considered by Theravada practitioners to contain the most direct teachings of the Buddha, as it is believed to preserve the original teachings in their most unadulterated form. The Pali Canon is relatively compact compared to the vast body of Mahayana scriptures, which includes a wide range of texts, such as the Lotus Sutra, the Diamond Sutra, and the Heart Sutra. These Mahayana texts often present more complex and abstract philosophical ideas, such as the nature of emptiness and the concept of the Bodhisattva's role in helping all beings attain enlightenment. The diversity and richness of Mahayana scriptures have contributed to the development of numerous schools and sects within the Mahayana tradition, each with its own interpretations and practices. In practical terms, this difference in scriptures also affects the way that Theravada and Mahayana Buddhists approach their daily practice. In Theravada, the emphasis is placed on the individual's meditation practice, ethical behavior, and study of the Pali Canon. Monks often live in monastic communities, where they dedicate themselves to the study of the teachings and the practice of meditation, following a strict schedule that includes early morning meditation, chanting, and study. Lay practitioners are encouraged to attend temple services, make offerings, and engage in acts of generosity, but the primary focus remains on supporting the monastic community. In Mahayana Buddhism, however, practice is often more diverse and can include not only meditation but also devotional practices such as chanting the names of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, participating in rituals, and engaging in acts of compassion for the benefit of others. Mahayana practitioners are encouraged to take the Bodhisattva vow, pledging to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. And they often engage in practices that involve visualizing and meditating on the Bodhisattvas and other enlightened beings. For instance, in Tibetan Buddhism, a branch of Mahayana, practitioners may visualize the deity Avalokiteshvara, cultivating the qualities of compassion that this Bodhisattva embodies. Despite these differences, both Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism share the core goal of alleviating suffering and achieving liberation. While their approaches to the path may differ, both traditions emphasize the importance of wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. Both also recognize the importance of compassion in the spiritual journey. Even though the emphasis and scope of compassion differ between the two schools, Theravada's focus is on personal enlightenment and the monastic community's role in guiding individuals toward that goal, while Mahayana places greater emphasis on the interconnectedness of all beings and the Bodhisattva's vow to assist others in achieving liberation. In conclusion, while Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism share the same foundational principles, they diverge significantly in their practices, philosophies, and cultural expressions. Theravada's conservative focus on individual enlightenment through monastic life contrasts with Mahayana's inclusive approach, which emphasizes the Bodhisattva path and the aspiration to help all beings attain enlightenment. These differences reflect the adaptability and diversity of Buddhist teachings, allowing Buddhism to thrive in various cultural contexts and meet the spiritual needs of different people throughout history. Meditation and mindfulness occupy central positions in both Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism, playing an essential role in the cultivation of wisdom, compassion, and the ultimate goal of liberation. While the focus on meditation is shared across both traditions, the techniques and practices used differ significantly, offering a diverse range of approaches that reflect the distinctive philosophical underpinnings of each school. Meditation, in both Theravada and Mahayana, is seen not only as a tool for spiritual development, but as a transformative practice that shapes the practitioner's worldview and behavior. Mindfulness, the continuous and non-judgmental awareness of the present moment, is closely linked to meditation, and both traditions emphasize its importance for deepening insight into the nature of reality and alleviating suffering. In Theravada Buddhism, the practice of meditation is primarily focused on vipassana, or insight meditation. Vipassana aims to develop clear, precise awareness of the body, mind, and emotions, allowing practitioners to observe the impermanent and interconnected nature of all phenomena. The ultimate goal of vipassana meditation is to gain insight into the true nature of existence specifically. to understand the three marks of existence: impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and non-self, anatta. By cultivating awareness of these fundamental characteristics, Vipassana practitioners seek to overcome attachment and aversion, which are the root causes of suffering. Through sustained practice, meditators gradually learn to let go of their habitual patterns of thought and reaction, leading to a state of deep equanimity and wisdom. A typical Vipassana meditation session involves focusing attention on the breath, body sensations, or mental phenomena, with the aim of observing them without attachment or judgment. Practitioners are encouraged to cultivate an attitude of mindfulness, watching the rise and fall of thoughts, emotions, and sensations as they occur, recognizing them as transient, and avoiding identification with them. Over time, this practice helps to loosen the grip of the ego and fosters a deeper understanding of the impermanence of all things. In addition to this analytical aspect of meditation, practitioners also engage in loving-kindness meditation, metta, which aims to cultivate compassion and goodwill towards all beings. This practice reinforces the Theravada emphasis on personal liberation and the development of qualities that will help the practitioner move toward nirvana. For example, in Vipassana meditation, a practitioner might sit in silence, focusing on their breath and noticing sensations in their body. As thoughts arise, the practitioner simply observes them without judgment, allowing them to pass away, rather than becoming entangled in them. Over time, this allows the meditator to experience a greater sense of clarity and detachment, providing the mental space necessary for insight into the nature of suffering and the cessation of suffering. In Mahayana Buddhism, meditation takes on a broader and often more diverse range of practices. While Vipassana and insight meditation are also practiced within Mahayana, other methods, such as Zen meditation, are central to this tradition. Zen meditation, or Zazen, is a practice that focuses on cultivating a direct, experiential realization of the true nature of reality. Unlike the analytical approach of Vipassana, Zen meditation emphasizes simply sitting in stillness and observing the mind as it is, without attempting to manipulate or direct it. Zen practitioners believe that the mind itself is the key to enlightenment, and through the practice of Zazen, they aim to experience the non-dual nature of reality where distinctions between self and other, subject and object, dissolve. The practice of Zen meditation often includes the use of koan, short, paradoxical riddles or stories that challenge the practitioner's conceptual thinking and provoke direct, intuitive insight. Koans are intended to break through the intellectual mind and open the practitioner to a deeper level of understanding that transcends ordinary logic and reasoning. For example, a famous Zen koan is, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" The purpose of this question is not to arrive at a logical answer, but to shake the mind out of its habitual patterns of thinking and open the practitioner to the experience of direct, unmediated awareness. Koans are designed to push the boundaries of the conceptual mind, leading to moments of satori, or sudden enlightenment, in which the practitioner experiences a direct and intuitive realization of the nature of existence. In addition to Zazen and koans, other forms of Mahayana meditation, such as Pure Land meditation, are also widely practiced. Pure Land Buddhism, a major school within Mahayana, emphasizes devotion to Amitabha Buddha, who is believed to have created a pure realm of bliss where beings can attain enlightenment. In this tradition, practitioners focus on the recitation of Amitabha's name with the aspiration to be reborn in his Pure Land, where they can continue their practice and ultimately attain Buddhahood. This practice highlights the Mahayana ideal of the Bodhisattva, as it emphasizes the aspiration to attain enlightenment not only for oneself, but for the benefit of all beings. Mahayana meditation often integrates the practice of mindfulness as well, but with a distinct emphasis on compassion and the cultivation of the Bodhisattva path. Mindfulness, in the Mahayana context, is not only the awareness of one's thoughts and feelings, but also the awareness of the suffering of others. Practitioners are encouraged to expand their mindfulness to include the well-being of all sentient beings, embodying the qualities of loving kindness, compassion, and generosity. This aspect of mindfulness is integral to the Bodhisattva vow, where the practitioner commits to helping all beings attain liberation. By cultivating mindfulness in this way, Mahayana practitioners seek to transform their awareness into a tool for both personal insight and the alleviation of the suffering of others. In both traditions, the practice of mindfulness extends beyond formal meditation sessions and becomes a way of life. Mindfulness is about being present and fully engaged in each moment, whether in meditation or in the activities of daily life. For example, a Theravada practitioner might practice mindfulness while eating, by paying full attention to the act of eating and noticing the taste, texture, and sensation of the food, while also being aware of any attachment or aversion that arises in the process. Similarly, a Mahayana practitioner may practice mindfulness during their interactions with others, being present to their emotions and thoughts while also considering the suffering and needs of others. One of the key similarities between Theravada and Mahayana meditation practices is the recognition that mindfulness is essential for developing the wisdom needed to see things as they truly are. In Theravada, mindfulness is a tool for observing the body and mind, leading to insights into impermanence, suffering, and non-self. In Mahayana, mindfulness extends this awareness to include compassion for others, making it a practice that is both personal and universal. Both traditions stress the importance of integrating mindfulness into all aspects of life, not just during formal meditation sessions, in order to foster a deep and lasting transformation of the mind and heart. A common thread that runs through both traditions is the notion that meditation is not an end in itself, but a means to an end, the end being liberation from suffering and the realization of the true nature of reality. In Theravada, the focus is on personal enlightenment, with the individual working diligently to free themselves from the cycle of birth and death. In Mahayana, while personal enlightenment remains important, there is a broader focus on the enlightenment of all beings, with the Bodhisattva ideal at the forefront. Meditation, in both cases, serves as the foundation for realizing these goals, whether through cultivating wisdom, compassion, or both. In conclusion, meditation and mindfulness are integral to both Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism, though the specific methods and emphases differ. Theravada meditation focuses on the development of insight through vipassana, while Mahayana meditation encompasses a wide range of practices, including Zen meditation, Pure Land meditation, and the use of koans. Both traditions, however, recognize the importance of mindfulness in transforming the mind and fostering both personal liberation and compassion for others. Through meditation and mindfulness, practitioners in both traditions seek to overcome ignorance, attachment, and suffering, ultimately attaining the wisdom and compassion needed to realize their true nature and the interconnectedness of all beings. Buddhism has made an indelible mark on the cultures and societies where it has taken root, weaving itself into the fabric of daily life, art, politics, and even social structures. Its influence is far-reaching and multifaceted, contributing not only to the development of religious practices, but also inspiring social reforms, humanitarian movements, and ethical frameworks for governance. From the serene gardens of Kyoto to the vibrant monasteries of Tibet, Buddhism has shaped diverse aspects of life, reflecting its deep commitment to peace, wisdom, and compassion. This influence is most evident in the arts, social justice, and the broader cultural values in countries where Buddhism is practiced. One of the most profound areas in which Buddhism has left its mark is in the arts, particularly in Japan. The practice of Zen Buddhism, which emphasizes simplicity, mindfulness, and a direct experience of the present moment, has deeply influenced various artistic traditions. Zen-inspired aesthetics, known as wabi-sabi, celebrate the beauty of imperfection, transience, and simplicity. This aesthetic is evident in Japanese tea ceremonies, where the careful, meditative preparation of tea is an expression of mindfulness, presence, and imperfection. The vessels used in these ceremonies, often hand-thrown and slightly irregular in form, reflect the Zen principles of accepting imperfection and finding beauty in the natural and unrefined. Zen gardens, with their minimalist design and emphasis on meditation, are another prominent example of how Buddhism has shaped Japanese art. The gardens are designed to encourage contemplation, with raked gravel representing water and carefully placed stones symbolizing mountains. These gardens invite visitors to slow down, engage with nature, and reflect on the impermanence of life. The beauty of Zen gardens is in their simplicity. Nothing is extraneous, and everything has a purpose. This approach to art and design, influenced by Zen principles, highlights the interconnectedness of all things and the impermanence of existence. Zen has also deeply influenced Japanese ink painting, sumi-e, calligraphy, and architecture. The principles of Zen, such as mindfulness, stillness, and the pursuit of enlightenment through simplicity, have led to the creation of art that is understated yet profound. A single brushstroke, executed with mindful precision, can evoke a sense of serenity and grace that transcends mere representation. In these traditions, there is a strong emphasis on the artist's state of mind, with the belief that true artistic expression arises from a meditative state of awareness. This interplay between art and meditation is a unique feature of Zen, reflecting the Buddhist understanding of art as a path to spiritual insight and enlightenment. In Tibet, the influence of Buddhism is even more deeply intertwined with social and political structures. Tibetan Buddhism, with its rich history of monasticism and mystical practices, has shaped the identity of Tibet for centuries. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition is unique in its emphasis on the role of the Lama, the spiritual teacher, as both a guide and a political leader. The Dalai Lama, for example, serves not only as the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism, but also as the political head of the Tibetan people. His leadership has been central to Tibetan society, with Buddhism providing the ethical and philosophical foundation for governance and social order. Tibetan Buddhist art, with its intricate mandalas, thangkas, religious paintings, and statues of deities, reflects the depth of spiritual devotion and the rich metaphysical worldview of Tibetan Buddhism. These artworks are not merely decorative but serve as tools for meditation and spiritual practice. The detailed depictions of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and other enlightened beings are designed to help practitioners focus their minds and cultivate qualities like compassion, wisdom, and equanimity. In Tibetan culture, the creation of religious art is considered a form of meditation, with the artist channeling their spiritual energy into the creation of sacred images. Buddhism in Tibet also played a role in shaping the social structure. The monastic community was central to Tibetan society, and monasteries were not just places of worship, but also centers of education, healthcare, and community life. The monks were highly respected, and their teachings influenced not only the religious life, but also the broader cultural and intellectual traditions of Tibet. Tibetan Buddhism, with its focus on the cultivation of compassion and wisdom, has inspired social movements and humanitarian work, both within Tibet and globally. Beyond the cultural and artistic realms, Buddhism's impact on society has been significant in terms of its contributions to social reforms and humanitarian work. The Buddhist emphasis on compassion, nonviolence, and the alleviation of suffering has inspired leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and the Dalai Lama, who have advocated for peace, justice, and human rights. Gandhi, deeply influenced by the Buddhist principles of ahimsa, nonviolence, and compassion, led the Indian independence movement through nonviolent means, advocating for social and political change without resorting to violence. His teachings on nonviolence were rooted in the Buddhist understanding of interconnectedness and the belief that harming others is ultimately harmful to oneself. The Dalai Lama, as both a spiritual and political leader, has also been a vocal advocate for human rights, compassion, and global peace. His message of compassion, interdependence, and nonviolence has resonated with people worldwide, inspiring movements for social justice and the protection of human rights. The Dalai Lama has emphasized the importance of inner peace and mindfulness as the foundation for a peaceful society, and his teachings have been embraced by individuals, communities, and organizations dedicated to humanitarian causes. Through his advocacy for Tibet and his efforts to promote dialogue and understanding between different cultures, the Dalai Lama has become a global symbol of peace and compassion. Buddhism's influence on social structures and humanitarian work extends beyond these prominent figures. Throughout history, Buddhist communities have been involved in charitable work, providing aid to the poor, caring for the sick, and working to alleviate suffering in various forms. In Southeast Asia, for example, Buddhist monasteries have historically played a key role in education and social services, providing free schooling and healthcare to impoverished communities. This tradition of social engagement is rooted in the Buddhist belief that spiritual practice must be grounded in compassion and that alleviating the suffering of others is an essential aspect of the path to enlightenment. Buddhism's impact on culture and society is not limited to specific regions or historical periods. Its teachings continue to shape modern movements for social justice, environmentalism, and global peace. Buddhist principles of mindfulness and non-attachment have been integrated into contemporary wellness practices, such as mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT, which have become widely recognized for their effectiveness in reducing stress and promoting mental well-being. Buddhist ideas about interdependence and the interconnectedness of all beings have also influenced environmental movements, with many Buddhist leaders advocating for the protection of the earth and its resources. In the West, Buddhism has also had a profound influence, especially in the realm of psychology and mental health. Mindfulness meditation, which has its roots in Buddhist practice, has become a popular method for managing stress, anxiety, and depression. The growing popularity of mindfulness in the West has led to a greater appreciation for Buddhist teachings on the nature of the mind, the importance of self-awareness, and the cultivation of compassion for oneself and others. The spread of Buddhism and its ideas has brought forth a global awareness of the importance of compassion, mindfulness, and ethical living. It has challenged materialistic and consumer-driven values, offering an alternative path that prioritizes spiritual development, inner peace, and the well-being of all beings. Buddhist concepts of non-attachment, impermanence, and the interconnectedness of all things offer a refreshing perspective on modern life, encouraging people to reflect on the deeper aspects of existence and to live with greater awareness and compassion. In conclusion, Buddhism has had a profound and lasting impact on the cultures, societies, and spiritual practices of the regions where it has taken root. From the artistic traditions of Japan and Tibet to the social and humanitarian contributions of Buddhist leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and the Dalai Lama, Buddhism has shaped the world in meaningful ways. Its emphasis on compassion, mindfulness, and the alleviation of suffering continues to inspire social reforms and global movements for peace and justice. As Buddhism continues to spread and evolve in the modern world, its teachings will likely continue to guide individuals and communities in their pursuit of inner peace, social harmony, and the well-being of all sentient beings. Both Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism stand as significant pillars within the broader framework of Buddhist practice, each offering unique yet interconnected approaches to the teachings of the Buddha. While Theravada emphasizes personal, monastic discipline as the path to individual enlightenment, Mahayana introduces a broader, more inclusive approach focused on compassion and helping others achieve liberation. Despite their differences, both paths are ultimately united by the same overarching goal: to transcend suffering and achieve nirvana, or enlightenment. Over the centuries, these two traditions have shaped not only the spiritual lives of millions of Buddhists, but also the broader cultural and social landscapes of the regions where they have flourished. As these traditions continue to evolve and influence the lives of millions, they offer rich and diverse spiritual paths for those seeking to understand the nature of suffering and the means by which it can be overcome. At its core, Theravada Buddhism remains rooted in the earliest teachings of the Buddha. As preserved in the Pali Canon, Theravada practitioners prioritize personal meditation, ethical conduct, and monastic discipline in their journey toward enlightenment. The path of the arahant, or enlightened individual, is one that is walked alone, with a singular focus on attaining nirvana through wisdom, ethical conduct, and concentration. Monastic life is central to this tradition, as monks and nuns dedicate themselves fully to the pursuit of enlightenment, embodying the ideals of renunciation and self-discipline. The emphasis on individual liberation means that the Theravada practitioner is typically less concerned with the liberation of others and more focused on their own spiritual progress. In contrast, Mahayana Buddhism, which emerged later and spread across East Asia, emphasizes the Bodhisattva ideal, an enlightened being who chooses to remain in the cycle of birth and death, samsara, in order to assist all sentient beings in achieving liberation. The Bodhisattva path requires a profound commitment to others, where compassion takes center stage. The practitioner on the Mahayana path pledges to work tirelessly for the welfare of others, postponing their own entry into nirvana until all beings are freed from suffering. This selfless commitment is viewed as the highest form of spiritual attainment, as it reflects the Buddha's own compassion and desire to alleviate the suffering of others. Mahayana Buddhism, therefore, offers a more expansive vision of enlightenment, one that is not just individual but collective. The Mahayana teachings are also broader and more inclusive in their approach to spiritual practice. While Theravada Buddhism largely focuses on monasticism, Mahayana includes a wide range of lay practitioners in its community, with an emphasis on making the teachings accessible to all, regardless of social standing. In Mahayana, every individual is seen as capable of attaining Buddhahood, which is viewed as a universal potential inherent in all beings. This democratization of enlightenment contrasts with the more exclusive and monastic nature of Theravada. Additionally, Mahayana introduces more elaborate doctrines, such as the nature of emptiness, shunyata, and the interdependent nature of all phenomena, which challenge traditional concepts of self and reality. These teachings offer a more flexible, philosophical approach to Buddhism, one that encourages practitioners to question and understand the deeper nature of existence. Despite their philosophical differences, the two traditions share several fundamental principles. Both Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism uphold the Four Noble Truths, which outline the nature of suffering, dukkha, its causes, its cessation, and the path leading to its cessation. They also both subscribe to the Eightfold Path as the practical means by which one can overcome suffering and attain enlightenment, whether through the Theravada practice of vipassana meditation, which focuses on insight into the nature of impermanence and the cultivation of mindfulness, or the Mahayana practice of Zen meditation, which emphasizes direct, non-conceptual awareness. Meditation remains central to both paths as the most direct means of achieving insight and wisdom. In terms of their impact, both traditions have left a lasting imprint on the cultures and societies they have touched. The influence of Buddhism on the arts, for example, is profound. In Japan, the Zen tradition has shaped everything from the design of gardens to the practice of tea ceremonies. Zen gardens, for example, are designed to encourage mindfulness and contemplation, with their minimalist style promoting a sense of peace and stillness. The tea ceremony, too, emphasizes simplicity, mindfulness, and a deep appreciation for the present moment, all values drawn from Zen teachings. The same principles are evident in the art of calligraphy and painting, where every stroke of the brush is an expression of mindfulness, reflecting the unity of art and meditation in the Zen tradition. Similarly, in Tibet, the influence of Buddhism has permeated not only the arts but also the political and social structures. Tibetan Buddhism, with its complex spiritual and philosophical teachings, has shaped the identity of the Tibetan people for centuries. The Dalai Lama, as both a spiritual and political leader, embodies the synthesis of these roles, using his position to advocate for peace, compassion, and the protection of human rights. Tibetan Buddhist practices, particularly those involving meditation and visualization, are designed to cultivate compassion, wisdom, and clarity, and they are deeply embedded in the daily lives of Tibetans. Buddhist monasticism in Tibet has also played a central role in the preservation of Tibetan culture and spirituality, with monasteries serving as centers of education, healthcare, and social welfare. However, while the role of Buddhism in shaping the arts and culture is significant, its impact on social and political movements has been equally transformative. The Buddhist commitment to nonviolence and compassion has inspired social reformers and leaders around the world. Mahatma Gandhi, for example, drew heavily on Buddhist principles, particularly the idea of ahimsa, nonviolence. In his struggle for Indian independence, his belief in the power of nonviolent resistance was rooted in the Buddhist understanding that all beings are interconnected and that harm to one is harm to all. Similarly, the Dalai Lama's advocacy for peace, human rights, and environmentalism is grounded in the Buddhist understanding of interdependence and compassion. His teachings on nonviolence and dialogue have influenced global efforts toward peace and reconciliation, showing that Buddhist principles can guide not only individual spiritual practice, but also the broader ethical frameworks for social and political life. For many, the practice of Buddhism offers profound insights into the nature of suffering and the human condition. The teachings of impermanence, suffering, and non-attachment offer a path to understanding the realities of life in a way that is both practical and transformative. Whether in the context of the Theravada tradition's emphasis on personal liberation or the Mahayana ideal of compassionate action, the Buddhist path provides a clear and direct means for cultivating a life of wisdom, mindfulness, and compassion. The practice of mindfulness, which is central to both traditions, encourages practitioners to remain present in the moment, to cultivate awareness of their thoughts, feelings, and actions, and to develop a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. One of the most powerful lessons drawn from Buddhism is the impermanence of all things. In a world that is often marked by chaos and uncertainty, the recognition that everything is temporary provides a sense of peace. The teachings of Buddhism encourage us to let go of our attachments, recognizing that everything, including our suffering, is subject to change. This understanding helps us navigate the difficulties of life with greater equanimity and acceptance. Similarly, the practice of mindfulness teaches us to be fully present in the moment, to engage with our experiences without judgment or attachment. Through mindfulness, we can cultivate greater awareness and clarity, leading to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Ultimately, the core teachings of both Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism offer a roadmap for navigating the complexities of human existence. The path to enlightenment may be long and challenging, but it is a path that leads to greater peace, wisdom, and compassion. By integrating these teachings into our daily lives, whether through meditation, ethical conduct, or compassionate action, we can find greater meaning and purpose, both individually and collectively. In the end, the teachings of Buddhism provide a timeless guide for those seeking to understand the nature of suffering and the means by which it can be transcended, offering a path of transformation that is as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. Wow, we've just covered some incredible insights today, diving deep into the rich world of Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. From the path of personal liberation to the compassionate path of helping all beings achieve enlightenment. These two branches offer unique approaches to the Buddha's teachings. But no matter which path you find yourself drawn to, one thing is clear: Buddhism offers powerful lessons that can help us live with more awareness, kindness, and a deeper understanding of the world around us. As we wrap up, take a moment to reflect on the incredible lessons we've learned today. Whether it's the concept of the Bodhisattva, the role of meditation, or the emphasis on compassion, there's so much wisdom within these teachings that we can incorporate into our own lives. Now, I want to hear from you. Which aspect of Theravada or Mahayana Buddhism resonated with you the most? Do you find the pursuit of personal enlightenment more appealing? Or are you drawn to the idea of helping others? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to start a conversation with you. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means the world and allows me to keep making these videos for you. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss a new upload. We've got so many more exciting topics coming your way. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep growing.